I'm always curious when it comes to book adaptations. What sort of characteristics does a scene in the book need to have for you to say, okay, I'm going to not put that in there?
I think when there are exceptions, but because the book's 580 pages long and we've got 2 hours to 120 page screenplay, there's got to be some sort of casualties, and generally what it tends to be is if a scene doesn't move the story forward, and because in cinema it's always about what's going to happen next, and so one can't linger too long on a particular facet of that story unless it moves things forward. There obviously there's elements of characterization that are crucial to that. But generally, there are things that there might be a long fantasy sequence, for instance, that is beautiful on the written page because it allows a reader to use their imagination and let their imagination run free. But if it doesn't really move the story on, then that's probably best left to the imagination of the reader, and we focus on the film and something that drives the narrative forward.
The music, I think, plays a pivotal part in this film, from Geoffrey Rush's character to John Williams. I wanted to talk a little bit more about John Williams. What was it like collaborating with him on this project?
It's incredible, never dreamt I'd even get to meet the man, let alone work with him. Because when I was a kid, going to cinema in the sort of 70s and into the 80s, I would see so many Spielberg films because I loved the stuff that they did, that they did together, and then to actually be working with John was incredible. And I wasn't, I heard that he might be interested, and so we met up and talked about the project in LA, and once we met and talked about it, it became apparent that he had exactly the same vision for the film as I did. He didn't want to do a huge signature piece like the pieces he's most well known for, like Star Wars and those things. He wants to do something which was more subtle and a smaller emotional piece that people could connect with, rather than the big brash pieces he's known for. So, once we established that, he was wonderful to work with. He really is a genius. There's not many people that I've come across who are that. Who are so sort of so clever about what they do, but also incredibly easy and wonderful to work with, and a true gentleman too.
Now, looking at some of the films which have been coming out recently for book adaptations, you got Les Mis, you got Life of Pi, you got Gatsby, and now this. Yeah. I feel that there's a lot of seminal novels making their way to the big screen. Are there any sort of novels that you read when you were a child that you'd like to see maybe become a film one day?
No, I think probably most of them already have, but there does seem to be this incredible appetite for literary adaptations, and I think partly it's because that studios or financiers know that if 8 million people have bought a book, then there's already a great number of those people will want to go and see the film. So it's proven the fact that it's a story that people, whether it be Life of Pi or Book Thief or whatever, it's proven that that story attracts an audience and people want to know about it. So in a way, it reduces the risk that they would have to take with a completely new work, and I guess that's why there's a prevalence for adaptations. But I think if it is a book that people have really enjoyed, then why not bring it to the bigger screen?
Now, the more I thought about it, the more I liked Death as a narrator for this film. I think it really worked. If you were going to do, because it fills in the sort of narrative gaps and also sets the scene very, very well. If you were going to do a voiceover of this conversation right now, you or me, what do you think? What do you think we'd be saying?
What? How do you mean? What Death would say?
No, what you would be saying. If you were doing a voiceover of this conversation, what do you think? What do you think that might say?
I don't think what we're talking about is anything big enough for Death to be interested in. He's sort of the character in the film is, and indeed the character in the book. He gives us from talking to Marcus as well. He gives us a completely different perspective of what we would expect. We're always led to believe Death is a very dark character, and indeed he sends himself up in the film. He says, I quite like the vision of me with a hood and a cape and a scythe and all those sort of things. And he's not. He's a very warm, witty character who's actually got a heart, and his observations about human life are really quite beautiful. And I think one of the odd things, talking to Marcus, was that a lot of people who've read the book and hopefully see the film come away from it and actually look upon death in a different way. They don't think it's quite as frightening a prospect as it perhaps once was before.
Now, the novel was written by Marcus.
Yeah.
Was there any particular scene you were sort of conscious about, sort of asking about, if did I get this right? Are you sure this is right?
Well, no, Marcus was involved, quite a bit throughout. And we had meetings together before, and we discussed the screenplay, and was there anything that he'd like to put in that I'd like to put in or leave out, and so we discussed it before as to what was the right thing to put in and leave out. So I think since talking to Marcus, he feels that both the book and the novel and the film share the same heart and spirit. Obviously, it's a different medium, and so again, it's much quicker. In terms of it's 2 hours instead of 16 hours of reading, I think someone worked it out to be. But the spirit is the same, and he's pleased with the film, and I'm pleased about that.
Well, great talking to you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great to meet you. Thanks.